Now let's look at how to use a page setup from Write. Just click on page setup and you can see that a text box appears, and in this text box there are so many different tabs that you can use to set up your page. First, let's look at the organizer. In the organizer you can see the name and the next style. All you have to do is choose your next style from the drop down menu. Either you can use endnote, envelope, first page, footnote, HTML index, left page or right page. So once you've chosen that, it will stay. Next you can go to page. In page you can choose the paper format, how you want the format to be. For instance, either letter or legal, tabloid, A4, A3, A5. There's so many different options in which you can choose from. Once you've chosen which paper format that you want, click on it. You can choose to change the width and the height of your documentation. You can choose the orientation of a paper format, either to be portrait, which is in this way, or landscape, which is in this way. Next, you can choose the text direction, whether you want it left to right, or right to left, or right to left vertical. Once you've chosen the text direction, then you can choose the paper tray, which is either from printer setting or auto select or tray 1 or manual. Then you can choose your margins. You can choose to modify your left margin size, which is this size, or your right margin, which is here, your top and your bottom margins as well. Then you can choose the layout settings of your page. You can choose right to left or mirrored, only right or only left. And you can choose the format of your numbering, either 1, 2, 3 or ABC or Roman 1, 2, 3. And if you choose on registered true, you can choose the reference style, which is you can choose from text body or title or quotation, numbering. There's so many different options in which you can choose from. Once you've done your selection here, we can move on to background. In background, you can choose to have a color for your background by just selecting any of this color, or you can choose to put a graphic. All you have to do is click on graphic. It takes you to this particular page. You can browse for the place in which you saved your graphic. Click on browse. It will show you that there are so many different places or location that you can save your documentation and choose to open the documentation from. You can choose from recent documents or desktop, my documents, my computer, or my neighbor places. This location choosing depends on where you actually saved your documentation. So let's look at clip arts, for instance. Then you can just choose one of it and click on open. As you can see, the graphic appears, and you can choose the position in which you want to put your graphic, either in the center or at the top. And then you can choose the area, or you can choose the tab. Once you've chosen the setting, you can move on to header. Header, click on header if you want to put a header. You can choose the same content left to right if you want to. You can choose how wide you want the left margin and how wide you want the right margin. You can choose how much of spacing you want, and you can choose whether you want to use dynamic spacing, the height of your header, and the auto fit height. Footer goes the same way. All you have to do is click on footer. You can choose the same content left or right. You can choose the width of your left margin, your right margin, and then you can choose the spacing, how much of spacing you want. You can choose whether you want to use dynamic spacing. You can choose the height of your footer. Let's move on to borders. In borders, it gives you 4 options to which you can choose. The first one is the line arrangement. The line arrangement, you can choose what kind of line you want, whether you want it to set all 4 borders line, or just left and right, or top and bottom, or just left. And once you click on any one of this line arrangement, you are able to choose line, how thin or how thick you want your line, and what color you want your line to be in. And you can space the contents. You can choose how much you want your left spacing to be for your line, or the right spacing, or the top spacing and the bottom spacing. You can choose to even synchronize all of them to be the same. You can choose if you want to put shadow for your spacing. You can even choose to put a shadow style for your line arrangement. There are so many different ways in which you can put a shadow. Once you click any of this, you can put the distance you want your shadow to be from your original line arrangement, and you can choose the color of your shadow. Let's move on to columns now. In columns, you can choose how many columns you want for your page, either 2 column, 3 column, and once you choose your column, you're allowed to use the width and the spacing. You can choose how wide you want your columns to be and what is the space of your column. You can even put separated line for your columns, choose from how thin to how thick. Next, we will move on to footnote. Footnote, you're able to put in 2 different ways. Either you can choose not larger than page area or maximum footnote height. If you choose on maximum footnote height, you need to choose what is the maximum footnote height that you want in your documentation. You can even choose, once you've done the maximum footnote or chosen not larger than page area, you can move on to space to text. You can choose the amount you want in this. You can put a separated line. You can choose the position where you want to put the separated line, with the left, center, or right. You can choose the width of your separated line, the length, and the spacing to the footnote contents. And the last that we will see is text grid. In text grid, you're allowed to choose whether you want to put no grid, grid with lines only, and grid with lines and characters. So if you choose grid with lines only or grid with lines and characters, as you can see, you are allowed to choose the grid layout. In the grid layout, it gives you the options to choose how much of lines you want to put per page, or the characters you want to put per line, the maximum base text size, the maximum Ruby text size. And also you can see that there's a grid display. You can choose to display the grid, or you just want to print the grid. You can even choose the color of the grid that you want for your documentation. Once you've chosen your options, just click on OK. And as you can see, I put a background and I chose text grid with lines and characters in it. Therefore, you saw in this particular tutorial how to do a page setup. You can choose how to organize your page, put a grid, the borders, how you want to put a header and a footer. Page setup will allow you to enhance your documentation even further.